information. Hold on. It is impacting our economics as well, and economics impact those things as well. So it's important to keep in mind that as we think about finances, we're not just thinking about money. We're thinking about all of what money means to us in America, in our lives, for our children, for our legacy, for our health. And that's why the title of my presentation is Planning for Financial Wealth. And somebody said, okay, you spelled wealth wrong. I said, no, I didn't. Because what I'm thinking of, and I apologize for my dog, wealth is more than just money, W-E-A-L-T-H. It is your wellness. It is your access to good healthcare. It is your access to good education. It is your access to a network of people. And so it has everything to do with everything. So let's start there. Before I go on, if you would in the chat, and you don't have to say who you are, if you could just put your age or age group, if you don't want to put your age, it helps me to kind of focus my discussion so that I know what demographic I'm talking to. I think I see a lot of really young faces out there, which is awesome. And then, then there's me. I'm a mother of 3. I'm a single mother of 3. And so, I'm dealing with 2 kids in college. So the conversation I might talk about with, another 50-year-old who's got 2 college kids is going to be very different than the conversation I might have with a 23-year-old who's just starting out, out of college. So I want to be mindful and respectful of your time and make sure that I'm answering questions and raising points that are going to be important to you tonight. So if you could just dump that in the chat, and that will give me some idea of who I'm talking to. Let's start with the very fundamental financial planning concepts. So I like to say, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Write that one down. It's the God's honest truth. If you do not have a budget, if you do not have a financial plan, you are basically committing yourself to failing financially. And I know that that's not what you want. So it's very important that you take the time to understand the basics of creating a budget, sticking to a budget, being disciplined, learning how to save, learning some tricks of the trade, things that might help your, let's say, your credit score, for example. But knowing what things to think about when you're making a financial decision, I think is crucial. So hopefully you'll walk away with some takeaways, and please, again, throw some questions in the chat and I'll make sure that I address them along the way. All right, so I've got people from their mid-20s to, let's say, my age, 56. Great, wonderful. So I know what I know the audience I'm targeting. So let's talk about financial planning. Financial planning, basically, there's so many different strategies out there. I really want to just keep it simple. And I want to just tell you a couple of basic things you need to know. And then from there, I can always talk one-on-one offline or answer questions that are directly impacting you right now. So there are 3 stages that you go through in life. And let's say you're done with college, 2021, you're just starting out. And that's what we call the asset accumulation phase. You're in the process of finding a job. You're thinking about how much money can I earn. You want to make sure that what you're focused on in the asset accumulation phase are things like buying a car, buying a house, starting, to look at savings, making sure that you are living comfortably. You want to buy furniture, But all of that is based on how much money you make. So your focus is, hey, what's the highest paying job that I can enjoy, that I can find, and how do I navigate that? So you're in that part of your life. You're in your 20s, 30s, and 40s as you start to accumulate. And some of the things you accumulate are other people, like a spouse and children, right? So part of your accumulation phase, think about it. What does that look like for you? It means you're spending a lot of money. You're buying things, right? So as you're taking in money, you're spending quite a bit of money. So your cash flow is high. Your debt level may be high and your asset level is low, meaning that you bought a house, you bought a car, but you probably don't have $1 million in the bank, and you probably don't have $1 million in your 401k. And you probably didn't inherit $1 million either, but maybe you did. Most people, that's not their situation. So in your accumulation phase, you're accumulating assets, but you're not quite there. In your mid 40s and later, you're in the phase of, conserving and risk management and saving and planning. This is the preparation stage for life after work. So you're starting your 401k, you are considering, wait, do I need life insurance? Do I need to, be worried about long-term care? Do I need a will and a trust? And how do I protect what I'm working for and earning and what I've gathered, the assets that I have? And make sure that in my retirement, I have a standard of living that I like, and I'm not depending on my kids to take care of me. And I have enough put away so that maybe my mortgage is paid off. Maybe, I want to retire to Florida. I want to make sure that I have enough planned for that stage. In your retirement stage and slightly before that, so maybe your, 50s onwards, you are in your, what we call our distribution gifting phase. This is where your grandma, right? And you're starting to think about making sure that your grandkids have, a college fund, and you might want to start thinking, oh my God, I've been very fortunate. I've earned $10 million in my bank account, and I want to make sure that I protect it and pass it on to my children in the most tax efficient way possible. How do I do that? So 3 distinct phases: mine, accumulate, protect and save, and then preserve and pass on. 3 distinct stages. What are the things that you need to think about on top of that is most financial planners, we use 3-panel planning. It's first you think about what are your risks. So you come to me and you're like, Dawn, hey, we got to think about financial planning. First thing I want to do is, a lot of people want to talk about investing. Let's be honest. Everybody wants to make money. We want to talk about making money. It's cool to talk about making money. But before you can talk about investable assets, you need to know what that is. And most people think, okay, I've got a couple $1,000 I need to invest. You should not be investing $2,000 if you have debt, if you have no life insurance, if you have no long-term care plan, if you have nothing in place that protects you from an emergency, for example, an emergency fund, you're not ready to invest. You are still in the phase of budgeting and assessing your risk. So that's a phase that we need to talk about, risk management phase. Risk management is talking about, what if I die? Who's going to take care of my kids? Do I have money put aside? Is there a life insurance policy for them? What if I don't die? What if I become ill and I can't work? Do I have disability, long-term care? What's my plan? Do I have property insurance on my house? Do I have car insurance? That's risk that you have to think about. The next thing we think about is savings. So let's think about savings and let's think about what that means. So fundamental to any financial plan, you should have 3 to 6 months of emergency funds in a cash account or a cash equivalent account. What does that look like? A CD or cash. Cash right now is getting almost 5% in the bank. If you're not getting 5%, you got to figure that out. But you could be getting up to 5% in some cash in some cash accounts right now. So it's not bad. Cash is quick, it's liquid, it's something you can access within 24 hours because of an emergency. You need 3 to 6 months. How do you determine what that means? Let's say I make $1,000 a month, just for easy numbers. I need 3 to 6 months. So I need to have a bank account with up to $6,000 in it that I know I can access immediately, anytime. Now, that could be different for someone like, let's say, a doctor who I make $10,000 a month. I spend $10,000 every month, which means I'm not saving anything, which is terrible. But I need 6 months. Well, what if you're a doctor and it takes you a year to find a new job? Is 6 months enough? Probably not. So everything I'm going to tell you is average, but everybody's situation is different. And please understand, when we give general information, that's exactly what it is, general information. If your situation is unique or different, the solution is going to be different, and keep that in mind. So some people, you might want to have a year's worth. Some people, you're fine with 3 to 6 months. Now, how do you determine the 3 to 6 months? Look at your bills. If you spend $6,000 in a house every month, you need $6,000 times 6. You need $36,000 in the bank as an emergency fund. I think the math makes sense, but if you want me to go slower through that, I can go slower through it and give you specific examples. So that's your emergency fund. You need to understand your savings practice. How much money am I saving? You heard the term, pay yourself first? Pay yourself first. So every paycheck, how much of your paycheck are you saving? The recommendation is 10 to 15%. 10 to 15% of every paycheck needs to go into your savings. I can talk about what the savings look like later, but just off the top, before you pay any bills, before you do anything, 10 to 15% goes away for savings. Now, take housing, for example. We do something called a housing ratio. Many of us love big houses. I like a lot of space. I have 3 kids. I want them to each have their own bedrooms. You go out there in West Hartford right now, you try to buy a 4-bedroom house, you're looking at about 500 plus. I buy a house for 500,000. My mortgage is $2,500 a month. Well, if I only make $4,000 a month, that $2,500 is more than 50% of my income. I can't afford it. I should not have bought that house. I need to come up with a different alternative. What is the recommendation for your housing? 28%. Your housing should not be more than 28% of your income. So you take your housing, which is your monthly mortgage payment, include your insurance on that. So it's your principal and your interest and insurance. Divide that by your gross pay monthly, and you'll get that percentage. If it's more than 30%, you're paying more for your housing than you probably should. And just keep that in mind. In Jamaica, we say, gone bad already. Gone bad already. You already bought the house, right? You're not going to give it up, right? That's fine. But if you're going into buying a house, do not let anyone convince you to buy a house more than you can afford, and banks love to do that because they just want the loan and we want to sell houses. Do not let anyone convince you to buy a house that's more than 30% of your income. If you want to include your, groceries, your furniture, your things that the landscaping, things that, you include in the house, include that as well in your calculation, but that should not equal more than 38% of your income. So all of your bills and your housing pertaining to the house, not everything, but pertaining to house, should not equal more than about 38% of your income. And I know for a lot of people, we're upwards of 50%. And a lot of us, we bought houses. If you were buying houses back in the 1980s and 90s, that's why we had the big mortgage bust, right? In 2008, lots of people were buying houses bigger and more expensive than they could really afford. Try to live within your means. The other thing that we want to keep track of, besides our savings and our housing, and we want to track our spending. Try to track your spending. How I do that is I look at my monthly statements, I go through it, and I look at, oh my God, Dawn, this month you spent like $200 on Starbucks, really? I joke all the time, and I used to say, use the hair, black hair costs money. We spend a lot of money on our hair. And one of the things I agreed to do when I was, thinking of my budget is, once a month, I skip that hair appointment. I save myself a couple $100s a month, skipping a hair appointment. So it's just give and take. If I can delay the immediate gratification of having my hair done, $200 a month, starting to invest early is a lot of money in retirement. You have no idea the time value of money. $200 a month starting to save at age 27 is better than $2,000 a month starting to save at age 50. Because the time value of money and the compounding of the interest, you will have far more money than if you wait until you're 50 and save $2,000 a month. Trust me, I've done the math. So keep that in mind. The earlier you start, the better habits you have, the better. So one of the things that we do, when we do financial planning is absolutely looking at these types of ratios with you, sitting down with your bank statements, weeding through it. What's discretionary? What's not discretionary? Where do you have flexibility to tighten up or let go of some things? And then we can start saying, well, how much money are you saving? Are you saving 10 to 15%? Great. Now, let's talk about retirement. Let's talk about 529s and planning for college. Ladies, I know we are always thinking about other people first. We always do. And we always think about our children first. And I'm never going to be the one to tell you not to. Do not start a 529 and save for college for your kids before you plan for your retirement. I will tell you, in the short run, your kids are going to love you for paying for their college, but they're not going to love you so much when they're paying for your long-term care bills and having to worry about making ends meet and finding grocery food and transportation for you in your retirement because you didn't plan for your retirement. So it's one or the other, right? We try to do both. We try to do everything. Do not start a 529 and plan for college before you have an idea or a plan for your retirement. And that means maxing out your 401k at work. I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to over the years who tell me they can't afford their 401k. I said, does their company match? Yeah. So you told your employer, Pratt & Whitney, that they want to give you 3%? Oh, no, 6%. 6%. They want to give you 6% more on top of your check, and you told them, no, thank you. I don't need that 6%. Oh, is that what I did? That's exactly what you did. When you have a company that's matching you, they are giving you additional dollars to plan for your retirement, and you are telling them, no, thank you. Keep that extra 6% of my paycheck because I got it like that. Right? No, we're not going to do that. We're going to be smart. If they put in 6%, you put in 6%, let them give it to you. If they put in 3%, you put in 3%. I don't necessarily want to overdo them, but I definitely want that match. That is money on the table that we're leaving with our corporation, who makes billions, by the way. Let them give it to you as a benefit. Now, 401k is pre-tax dollars. That means they're giving you this money before you pay taxes on it. What's the benefit of that? When it's time to do your taxes, your income looks lower than it really is. That's a good thing because it's pre-tax. You're saving taxes now. What's the bad thing? When you go to take it out later, which you have to, right? Then you get taxed. And I can't predict the future. I don't know what my tax liability is going to look like later. So I want pre-tax dollars and post-tax dollars. How do I get post-tax dollars? Everybody's like nodding. I know you know the answer, Patty. You start a Roth. An ROTH, a Roth account. A Roth account is post-tax, meaning you've already paid tax on the money. So when you go to use it later in life, it's tax-free. The only thing you're paying tax on is the gains. You have to plan for both scenarios because you cannot predict the future. You don't know. You might be in a situation where I might be getting $1,000 a month for my retirement, but I'm paying $200 a month in taxes. If I have a Roth, I'm not going to have that problem. So you want to do both. So start planning for your retirement, do the 401k at work, max it out if you can. The maximum is $23,000 for this year. And if you're 50 and over, you can add additional $7,500. I highly recommend it. So you can put in up to $30,500. Do it. It's the best thing for you in the retirement you are going to wish you had. So I've said a lot already on kind of preparation, things you can do. Let me touch a couple of things that impact a lot of us. College. I said don't do the 529 before you do the retirement. Absolutely correct. However, if you can do a 529, it is a great tax efficient vehicle for paying for college for your kids. If you choose to do that, not all parents do. And let me give you some ideas and thoughts about that as well. So let's think about college. If you have a child who has a bank account, the college looks at that bank account and says, this belongs to the child. The child can use 80% of this towards their college tuition. If the bank account belongs to mom, not the child, it's a much lower percentage that they will ask you to use towards education because they know you've got other bills. So I try to keep my children's assets at the bare minimum. If they have something called an UTMA or an UGMA, that is considered the property of the child. That means it's fair game for college fees. So unless you have a lot of wealth, do not do UTMAs and UGMAs for my children because I don't want them to have to use that in their financial aid form that you have to fill out, the FAFSA. The FAFSA will not include life insurance. A good vehicle for paying for college is life insurance. Because if it has a cash value inside of it, you can take money out of it to pay for education. However, the college is not looking at it and you don't need to disclose it to them because it's life insurance. Isn't that beautiful? These are all the tricks of the trade that other communities know about that we don't and don't use. So it is very important that we understand what tools are out there that could be helpful for us. And I'll talk about UTMA and UGMA again. Somebody asked what that is. I'll explain that again. It's something that a lot of us don't use anyway, but it's something that if you do use it, you need to know that it's actually considered the asset of the child and will be considered in the financial aid calculation of how much the family needs to pay. So I tend to not do UTMAs and UGMAs. I tend to keep my children's checking and savings account bare minimum and let them rely solely on what I make and what bills I have in their calculations so that my children can get the maximum amount of financial aid. Just something to think about. You may not need that. The other thing I should tell you about is life insurance. So I mentioned life insurance can be used for education. Life insurance can also be used to protect you, obviously death benefit, but it can also be used as income later in retirement. And that's an annuity or a life insurance policy with a cash value. Those are permanent. So when you talk to a financial advisor, you want to talk about the difference between term and permanent and whether it's right for you. Honestly, my take on it is, and this is my opinion, there's no need for a permanent life insurance policy. They're expensive. Annuities tend to be expensive. Whole life policies, I never recommend to clients. I use universal life policies. They are going to accomplish the same thing as a whole life policy. They're both permanent, but whole life tends to be more expensive. Universal life is permanent, but less expensive. It's like the difference between a mutual fund and an ETF. Mutual funds tend to be more expensive. You can get the same benefit in an ETF. So little things to think about is how do I cut the fees or keep the fees low for all of these products that I'm buying? The last thing you want to do is spend all your money on fees. A financial advisor, a good financial advisor is going to charge you about 1% of your assets under management. If you have $100,000 invested with me, I'm charging you 1%. What is that? $1,000? Not much, right? If you have $1 million with me, I'm charging you 1%. This is how financial advisors decide who they're going to work with. Work with a financial advisor who's going to treat you the same way he treats that $10 million client. You're paying just about the same fee. They have breakpoints. So at like 5 million, you could be paying 60, what we call bips rather than 100, right? So instead of 1%, you're paying 0.6%. So the more money you have with an advisor, the less your percentage is. So keep in mind that you want to work with an advisor who you trust, an advisor who's good, an advisor who is going to give you sound financial advice, meaning he or she has to be a fiduciary, which most of us are. Fiduciary means we have to do what's in the best interest of our client, not what's in the best interest of getting paid. And I rarely come across advisors who are not fiducians anymore, but you do have to ask them, are you a fiduciary? All right, so what if your company does not have a 401k? What's, the next best option? You start an IRA. What's an IRA? An IRA is an individual retirement account. You can start it through anyone, any financial advisor, any, company, Merrill Lynch, Bank of America, Fidelity, Schwab. You can start it with some of these online robo companies as well. Betterment, very low fee, and they do really well for their clients, and you can start an IRA with them. So an alternative to a 401k would be if you're in public, like a hospital or school, it's a 403b. But you can also just start an IRA, which is a completely separate from your employer. I highly recommend that even if you have a 401k, you should be doing an IRA as well. A 401k limits your choices. You are only having access to what the 401k plan provides for you. The advisor to the 401k represents the company, not you. An IRA, if you have a financial advisor, that advisor represents you, and you have access to everything out there on the planet, as opposed to just a bucket of funds. So it's always good to do both a 401k and an IRA. I would say that, at this point, it might be really good for you to just start throwing questions out there. I want to be mindful of time and making sure that I'm answering any questions. I've talked a lot about a little bit of everything. But if you want a specific answer to something, please just jump in at this point. And then I can make sure that it was a valuable time for you.
Everyone at this time, if you can put some questions in the chat box, and Carol Lectrum will be reading them off.
I think I jumped ahead and answered one or two already, but you can add to it or just raise your hands and I'll get that.
Yeah, I think the first one, Dawn. Hi, I'm Carol.
Hi, Carol.
I think the first one you answered, what if your company does not have a 401k? What's the next best option?
Yeah.
And I think that the Roth.
The IRA, and then the Roth. So the IRA is pre-tax dollars. If you start it outside of your company, it's definitely going to be a Roth, which is post-tax, yes.
Okay.
And then there was, I'm sorry, I forgot about the UTMA and the UGMA. So it's UTMA and UGMA, and you can look it up, but it's the uniform transfers to minor account. And basically what it is an account you set up in the for the benefit of your child. And once they reach the age of consent, which in Connecticut, I believe it's 18, you lose control. It's theirs. They can do anything they want to it. It might be 18 or 21. I'll have to double check. But you have to understand that an UTMA or an UGMA becomes the asset of the child at the age of consent or the age of maturity, and you cannot tell them you can't use that money for college. You can't tell them they can't cash it out and go party. And that's the downside of an UTMA or an UGMA. And I'll just, quickly type it in the chat. And that's one of the reasons why I don't see it being used a lot in Black and Brown communities, because as parents, we tend to be a little bit more controlling. And so that's what I would say about that. But I'm happy to talk to anybody who's interested privately. Next question.
What age should one purchase long-term care?
Beautiful question. Depends. Everything depends, right? So long-term care, I have a situation. I have a client and her daughter just turned 17. She wants life insurance on the daughter. And I hate to say it, her daughter has type 1 diabetes. At the age of 18, 19, it's almost impossible. Or if it is, it's going to be extremely expensive. Now, had she done that when her daughter was like 9 or 10, she could have gotten life insurance and long-term care. Long-term care is this. Think about this. Life insurance is, we know you're going to die. We're going to pay it, right? So permanent insurance, very expensive because the insurance company knows you're going to pay it at some point. Term insurance is like 10-year term, 15-year term. A 20-year-old, the insurance company is like, this person's not going to die in 10 years. I'll take a bet on her. Life insurance is cheap. The earlier you get it, the cheaper it is. Even permanent, it's going to be much less expensive if you get it younger. Long-term care is a little different. Long-term care is, they're looking very carefully at your health. and your family history. So if you have a family history of everybody getting sick, you know, you may live till you're 90, but you can't work and you're, you know, sick and you're sickly and you live for 30 years needing a lot of care. The insurance company who's offering that policy is going to charge you a lot of money. So it depends. And without knowing any background on your health, your longevity, your family history, I would say put it off as long as you can, but I would get it before I hit 55, because that's when things start getting very tricky. And most insurance companies are backing out of the long-term care space because they're losing money on it. Nobody wants to be in long-term care. So it's a few companies and it's not cheap. But that's a great question. And I would say it's something that you might want to talk about one-on-one with me.
Okay. Next question, Dawn. What is the difference between universal life versus whole life? And is universal like term insurance?
Universal life is permanent. It's not term. Term insurance is like car insurance. You don't use it, you lose it, right? It's usually for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, or 30 years. Those are the terms. If you hit 65, you're not getting 30 years. The most people will give you 20 years. So if you're thinking about 30-year term, you want to get it younger. And most people after 65, you don't really need it, right? So think about permanent insurance has a cash value that's in it. And that cash value is what determines, like, it's determined by how much you pay and how it's invested. So think about it. There are two accounts in a life insurance policy. If it's term, it's one account and it's all life insurance. What if I die? If it's universal life or whole life, it's two accounts. It's an account that says, hey, what if I die? This is going to pay this. And then the other account is, here's some money to invest for me that's going to accrue cash value that I can use whenever I want it or need it. So there are two accounts and two things going. What makes universal life better for me than whole life is the internal rate of return is higher. Why is it higher? Because whole life is costing more for the insurance company to run, and so they charge you more. So less is being invested for you. Universal life is a little cheaper. So think of whole life and universal life as both permanent, but if you have a choice, I would go with universal. I run the numbers and 99.9% of the time, universal works out less expensive than a whole life policy for my clients.
Could I ask a question? I'm sorry, I was the one that asked that question. Would it be, what is better, universal or having a term for 30 years and put your money in an IRA?
I love that question, Patty. That's excellent. Again, depends. So if you're working with an financial investor or you yourself is investing your money and you say, term insurance costs me $1,000 a year. This permanent insurance is costing me $5,000 a year. But if I took that $4,000 and invested it in an investment account, I could get 8%. If I give it to the insurance company, they're only giving me 3%. What's the answer? Go with the term, take your money, invest it someplace else, and get more return.
Okay. Thanks, Dawn, for that.
You're
The
welcome.
next question is, do you advise contributing to retirement accounts while paying off debt, or pause the contributions until all debt, quote unquote, except mortgage is paid off?
You can do both. Remember, I told you, you've got to pay yourself. Your retirement account is you paying yourself. That is one part of the saving. That's part of that. Remember, I told you need 10 to 15% savings every paycheck. Your 401k or your retirement account is the way you do that. Do not stop your contribution for anything unless you're in serious financial trouble. Now, when you say debt, you're talking about massive debt where you're in, bordering on a line of bankruptcy, or you're talking about, oh, I got a $10,000 credit card and, instead of putting 10,000 in my IRA, no. Again, it depends. We would need to talk about the whole picture in order to answer that question accurately or what's best for you. But if you can do both, where you're paying down your debt, you can do that and do a 401k. Because remember what you're leaving on the table. You're leaving, let's say your company matches 6%. Why would you leave 6% free money on the table? Unless your credit cards are 30% interest rate, you should be doing a 401k. But if, I think, was that Trisha? Oh, Trish, sorry. Trish, if you want to have a chat offline, I'm happy to have that chat with you one-on-one and figure out which is best for you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, as far as the debt, I was just referring to student loans because I just have this goal to pay it off like within like this year, right? So the past
Yeah.
2 years I've paused my contributions to my retirement, but I hear what you're saying. But yeah, we can talk offline.
Especially with student loans, especially with student loans. Let me just tell you, there's a lot of stuff coming down the pike with student loans. There's a lot of way to reduce the cost and then eventually have it be forgiven, maybe hopefully all of it. But let's talk offline, because what we want to do is run the calculations and make sure we know which is best for you. Because it depends on the amount of debt. If you, and again, type of debt. Student loan is not a bad debt. I honestly think you invested in yourself. So, but if you're the kind of person who's going to stress and say, I can't sleep at night because I've got this student loan, is your health important to you? Is stress good for you? No. If it keeps you up at night, focus on that. Because remember, the best wealth is health. Health is wealth. So you don't want stress and you don't want financial stress. So if that's something that keeps you up at night and that was a goal that you set for yourself, then that's your priority. And that's why I said everything depends. It depends on the conversation you have with your advisor. It depends on the numbers. You want a full conversation about it. There's no black and white with a lot of this.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Trish.
Okay, next question, Dawn. When saving for a house, what should be the minimum amount of savings in percentage? Should you have to start?
Depends on the cost of the house. Again, remember, you want to be saving 10 to 15% of your salary every month. If you're buying a house that's $1 million and you put down 10%, you're paying PMI, right? It's this mortgage insurance that you have to pay. Mortgage, insurance on the mortgage. It's always good to put down at least 20%. So then you have to think, well, what's 20% of $1 million? Well, that's $200,000. Break it down. A $500,000 house, instead of 200, you're looking at putting down 20%. That's $100,000. So, you have, everything depends, and I'm happy to sit and talk to you about it. What I don't want is for you to be coerced or convinced by someone that you can afford a house more than you really can. So, 6 months emergent, can you buy this house without touching your emergency fund? Can you buy this house and make sure that if anything goes wrong with it, you have emergency funds for that too? Those are the kinds of questions you need to ask yourself. But, I always say, aim to put down 20%, not 10. Make sure that it's a house that's going to increase in value, which is not too hard to do these days with the cost of homes, and they're, continue to go up. But you got to do your homework, especially when it comes to buying something as big as a piece of property. I hope I answered the question, but I'm happy to talk with you offline and figure out how much money you should have in the bank before you go that route. And, is renting always better than buying? That's always a tough question. In the past, I would say yes. In this market, more and more people are choosing to rent and are finding that renting is actually, working out more affordable for them. But that's not true in all states or in all towns. So you got to look where you're buying and figure that out. But again, you know, renting versus buying is always a question. I like owning an asset. You can use your home as your investment for retirement. So owning real estate, I like the idea of using the, you know, some write-offs. I like the idea of, you know, it's like paying yourself. Why pay a landlord when you can pay yourself? But again, it depends.
Okay.
You can open a Roth as long as you are making money. So can your son who has no job open a Roth account? No. You have to have earned income. So keep that in mind for a Roth. Did I lose track of the questions?
No, that sums it up for all the questions we have.
Awesome. We didn't
I-
talk a lot about teens, and I just want to emphasize that it's very important that you start talking to your kids about money and budgeting. These ladies, many of them have heard it before. You know, my 12-year-old has a credit card or a debit card. He has a budget. He has to manage it. He's accountable for it. You know, he knows when it goes in the red. He knows what he needs to do. I love, you know, those types of accounts where you can start off a child's with a small amount of money, whether it's a secured credit card, teaching them the responsibility, keeping the limit low so that you can manage it and maintain it. But they've got to learn about money and have a positive, healthy relationship with money before they go off to college or before they go off from college and start their own lives. Start investing. Can't afford an advisor? Do it yourself. Open a Betterment account.
What's a
Open
better,
a betterment.com. Check it out. Go online, check it out. Betterment.com. It's like a lot of these online investment accounts that you can open.
yeah,
Uh,
I did stockpile.
Okay. Betterment, I love, I know more about, but low fees, decent investment returns. You're not paying, you know, an advisor 1%. You're not having to, the problem is you're not getting any advice, right? So if you need advice, you need to work with an advisor. But if you don't feel that you're ready for that and you don't have, you know, $50,000 or you want to start with 1,000, you want to start with 2,000, you want to put 200 in a month or whatever, start with something like Betterment or even Merrill Lynch Edge. I have no problems with those kinds of things. What I don't want you to do is think you can beat the market. You heard it, you got a stock tip, something's really cool, it sounds great, and you run out there and you buy it without understanding that that comes with risk. If you don't mind losing that money, go ahead and do it. But once you invest in the market, you have to understand that there is risk. And so what you're trying to do is minimize the risk by working with someone who understands the market and can help you, guide you through it, or by investing in things that are a little safer than stocks, or buying stocks in companies that have been around a long time. Nothing's wrong with the Magnificent Seven, the Googles, the Microsofts. Those are great. They're more expensive. You're not going to get a lot of return on them, but if you buy and hold them, as you should, that's much better than going in and out, buying and selling, buying and selling, buying and selling. You're never going to outsmart the market. No one has ever been able to outsmart the market. And you shouldn't work with a financial advisor who tells you that they can. Because all that excessive trading is just running up fees for you.
What's your thoughts on REITs, Dawn?
I think they're a good form of investment. I think that, again, it's diversification, right? So when I develop a portfolio for a client, I'm looking at, well, making sure that they have some large cap, some value, some growth. I'm making sure that they have some alternative investments. One of those types of investments, REITs, is real estate investment, right?
Mhm.
Absolutely. Real estate is real estate. It's one of the best investments in the United States, right? So what's wrong with investing within a fund that's invested in real estate? So it's not me going out and buying a 3-family house and managing it and dealing with being a landlord, but it's me investing in real estate within my portfolio. Absolutely. There are good REITs out there. Just, work with a good financial advisor and make sure that you've got a nice amount or a nice fund that's part of your portfolio. Now, should it be 50% of your portfolio? Absolutely not.
Okay.
No. It's everything in moderation. What I do is, if I'm a moderate risk person, I don't want to take too much risk. I'm 60 years old, thinking about retiring anytime in the next 10 years. I'm a 60-40 portfolio, 60% equity, 40% fixed income. That's cash, CDs, bonds. If I am young, 27 years old, I'm getting into the market, I got a long time to go, far away from retirement, I'm 80% equity. I'm more aggressive. I'm 80 to 85% aggressive in stocks, and I'm trying to work that money for as long a period of time, because I know the market is probably going to give me maybe 8% every 10 years.
Mhm.
I'm good with that. I got a long runway. If I'm retiring in 5 years, I am very, very low equity and more fixed income. CDs, bonds, treasuries, cash. I'm not doing 60%, 70%, 80% equity, especially not in this market. I'm too close to retirement. So the closer you get to retirement, the more conservative you need to be, which means holding more cash and cash equivalents. When you're young, play the market, put your money in equities and stocks, but don't go in and out of stocks. Buy good stocks, hold them over long periods of time, and you will get your returns that you're looking for.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
God,
Debbie, go ahead. Imani.
Imani.
Yes. You mentioned like a few savings, so disability, life, retirement, and then emergency. So
Yeah.
for someone like me who's in like their mid-20s, not making that much, would you recommend putting a little bit into each or prioritizing one or two?
So, I don't know your situation, but generally, if I'm talking to Joe Schmo right now, emergency fund is essential. Emergency is that first stage. Remember, I told you the first stage before you start thinking about investing is risk management. Emergency is part of that risk management. God forbid anything happens to me, I'm not moving home to mom with 3 kids. I got to make sure I got 3 to 6 months emergency fund. That has to be hands down a priority for you. Now, if you live at home and you say, oh, my mom's got my back. In case of an emergency, I have this person or I have that person, then maybe you got some leeway. Your savings and investments, you're young, Imani, you said you're like 27 years old. Somebody said, well, what's young? 27 is young. Now, am I going to wait till I'm 35 or 40 to start my retirement? You could, but that's not ideal, because remember, I told you time value of money. The earlier start, the more you will have. So I would, even if it's $50 a month, even if it's $50 a month, I would start my retirement account. And that, if you have a 401k, do at least that, because a $50 contribution to your 401k is going to feel like $30 difference in your check. It's not going to feel like $50.
Right.
So start with your 401k if they have it at work. If they don't have it at work, start a Roth. And even if it's, $2,000 a year, do the Roth. And you get to put that on your taxes. You get credit for it on your taxes when you do or contribute to a Roth. So you get 2 benefits of it. And if you are 27, don't have any kids, don't own a house, filing single, you're paying taxes.
Right.
So try to decrease that tax by contributing to a Roth.
Okay.
And then you asked me about something else. So the Roth, Oh, disability and long-term care. You
Disability
probably,
and then, yeah. And long-term.
disability and life, you probably have from work, but it's a small amount. But if that's enough for you right now, because you don't have 3 kids, you got to feed like me, who's you're like, well, mommy, when you die, you know, what do I get? How do I pay for that? If you don't have that and you only get 25,000 in life insurance and you don't have anybody waiting for a death benefit, wait on that. Wait on the life insurance. Wait on the disability. I would definitely make sure I have my emergency fund and my retirement going right now, and even a small investment account.
Got it.
When you have kids, when you have bills, when you have somebody depending on you or counting on you, that's when you really have to make sure you have your life insurance and your long-term care and disability outside of work. So that can be your kind of like your sub priority. Start with the other ones first.
Okay. And then 10 to 15% of your paycheck, of each paycheck, right?
Yep.
Okay. Got
So,
it.
and that includes your 401k, right? So if you say I make $2,500 a month, you know, 10% is what, $250? I'm putting in $200 into my 401k. Okay, so I can take another 50 and put it someplace else.
Okay.
But if you could do more, do as much as you can.
This has been
Thank you.
awesome. Dawn, thank you so very much. You know, we need to have you back for an advanced course. It is
Anytime, but you know, I did promise Karen something, and I don't know if she mentioned it. She's been a busy woman today, but I did promise that any members of WISE, if you are a current member or you join WISE, I will, you know, I spend an hour or two with you free of charge, going through budgeting, investing, or whatever, answering any questions one-on-one with you offline. And you can get my contact information from Deborah or from Karen. But I will donate that time to WISE.
Thank you so very much, Dawn.
You're
Anyone who is interested in getting a one-on-one session, if you are a member, please contact myself or contact Karen, and we will ensure that Dawn has your information to schedule an appointment. This has been an amazing evening. I hope everyone enjoyed the pivotal information that was shared by Dawn. We probably have heard all of this in the past. However, we never know what we don't know until we hear it again. Coming up next month, coming up on Saturday, I just shared the flyer, and I'll bring it up on the screen. That is, we will be having in celebration of Black History Month. Woo, everything is going on. We will be having, this gym is in concert with WISE Network. They will be donating any funds received from this workout on Saturday. So please, if you can, if you're interested, share this flyer with your friends, and please donate. Please consider donating for the programs that we have scheduled for this coming year. If you can work out this Saturday, February 24th at 11 a.m. at 52 Main Street in Manchester. If you want more information, please go on to our website, wisenetworkct.com. The next program that we have coming up, bear with me. We want to be very appreciative of your time. So there's one more event that is coming up in March. We have actually 2 events in March that I want to share with you, and if I can only find. The other one is in your chat, and that is the event in New Haven. However, our next month's WISE conversation is going to be another awesome speaker like Dawn. This will be Daleen Hemmings. She is the program director of maternal health equity at Hartford Hospital. Did you know that 700 to 800 women die annually from childbirth-related issues? And Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die than their white counterparts while giving birth. It's not about Black women's education attainment nor their social class. It is the maternal mortality occurrences that are even higher among Black college graduates are those with access, such as Serena Williams. This is going to be an amazing, amazing topic, and we hope that you guys will mark your calendars and stay tuned for what WISE has coming forward. I'd like to thank Dawn again. Everyone, we thank you. I'd like to thank the guests on our program this evening. We thank you for taking the time out. We appreciate you. We know that your time is valuable, and we thank you. Please spread the word. If you would like to consider membership with WISE, you can reach out to the person who invited you this evening, or you can go on our website. If there's no other questions, I'd like to thank you and wish you a very good night. Be blessed. Have a good night, ladies. Thank you, Dawn. You were amazing. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.